When planning the road to success, there are a few steps to keep in mind. Identifying and solving the cause, facing and embracing change, goal setting, and being accountable. We'll talk about this today on Sustainable Success with Chris Salem. New and healthier habits lead to prosperity in all areas of your life and business. Now, here's your host, Chris Salem.
Welcome to Sustainable Success. Hope everybody is having a great week. I mean, here we are in the New York area today, and it is snowing out, but it's not as bad as everyone thought it would be. I'm looking out the window right now, and it's just a couple inches out there. So again, wherever you are, we hope that you are safe and having a prosperous week here the Sustainable Success way. And again, we are committed each and every week in bringing subject matter experts in to talk about new ways and from their personal experiences, how you can raise your level of influence and take your business and personal success to the next level. If you are new to Sustainable Success, you found us here at the Voice America Business Channel, but we're also on a new platform now, Libsyn. So now you can listen to all the shows each and every week with our different subject matter experts that we bring in to share their words of wisdom and insights to help elevate you to the next level. And you could also follow us on Spotify, Apple, and also iHeart and YouTube. Yes, we are on YouTube now. Not the video portion, but you can still hear the audio portion of our show there as well. So whatever you prefer, you can now access this content on demand anytime, anywhere from those sources. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, this is a membership program taking out all the noise out of social media. No more of those noisy notifications. You get to come in and generate genuine and authentic relationships and interact with the content that best suits you. If you'd like to get some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, we got a great show for you today and a topic that we're going to really unpack here today called human hacking. Win friends, influence people, and achieve your goals. And we happen to be here with someone that has a lot of experience in this area and happens to be, have a book in the area, which we'll find out more about later here, later today. His name is Christopher Hadnagy. He is a trailblazer in the realm of social engineering and a master hacker. His vast experience in the field, from training law enforcement professionals to speaking at renowned events like RSA and Black Hat, highlights his authority. He is the best-selling author of several technical books on security, including Social Engineering, The Art of Human Hacking. And then in terms of all the contact information, well, you're going to get that here later, as Chris will be providing that to you, and it will also be in the show notes. You can find that here on our description on Libsyn. It'll provide all the contact information for Chris and a great way to get in contact with him. And without further ado, we welcome Chris Hadnagy to the show. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And I know you're in a warmer place in Orlando right now. So I envy you right now. I hopefully I will be down in the great state of Florida in a couple weeks myself for a couple days to speak at a conference. I love this topic, Chris, and there's been a lot of buzz around this, especially on social media since we posted the show. We've had a lot of interaction from people that have been looking forward to the show coming on today. Can we talk a little bit about human hacking and your experience, your background in it, and what you will be from that sharing today with us?
Okay, so the origin story is a little interesting. My job, we go back 24 years ago. I was a good guy, white hacker, but I was getting paid by companies to break into their networks, so hack their computers. And I was reading books at the time by people like Frank Abagnale. He was the Catch Me If You Can. Kevin Mitnick, he was a famous social engineer, but they were all bad guys, con men that went to prison, ended up reforming. And I started thinking to myself, there's always, the computers are faulty, but humans are behind the computers. Can we use the things that they were doing in an ethical way, in a legal way? So I would ask these companies, can I try phishing? Can I try breaking into the building? Can I try phone calls? And they would all say, oh yeah, go ahead, try it. I don't think it's going to work. And then it would work. And the pivotal moment for me was one job, a CEO said to me, well, Chris, you did it. It worked. How do I fix it? And I said, I got no clue. I don't know. And he said, if I went to my mechanic and I said, hey, what's this noise? And he went, it's your brakes. And I went, fix it. And he said, I don't know how. I'd never use that mechanic again. And I went, that is such a great example, right? And that's what formed me to get all these books you see behind me here, read everything I can on neuroscience, influence, persuasion, body language, facial expressions. And I developed a framework on how we can use human hacking skills that ended up 15 years later turning into that last book I wrote, and nothing to do with actual security, everything to do about negotiations, communications, influence, and things like that.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And we always like to get the backstory, and when people are talking about this particular the subject they're an expert in, what the background is to shape out the context, what you're going to share. So in today's environment, with where things are, talk a little bit about the importance of the human hacking concept and how that can benefit an individual, a team, an organization, or any group of people for that matter.
Well, we can all probably agree that when the pandemic hit, we lost a large part of communications, right? I mean, nowadays it's not uncommon to never even meet people you work with. I hired people during pandemic that I hadn't met in person until like a year ago, right? And all I saw was I'm on a little 4-inch square here. That's it. That's how I knew them. And we also have been, because we were forced to be on the internet for everything, from entertainment to work to just hanging out with our friends, we have lost some of that ability to communicate in a way that makes us feel that rapport, that influence that we once had. So I think relearning these skills, honing these skills, this is so important nowadays, because that type of communication is never going to go away. We just have to alter it because now we're on the internet more, but we've lost some of that in the last few years. So I think enhancing those skills can really help you in every part of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that, while that can still now be a challenge, like you said, now COVID forced us, where we had to now, meet people and, and build relationships from, these little thumbnails that we kind of communicate through. And a lot of times we can only see their face, their eyes. We may not be able to maybe see more than their chest and up.
Yeah.
So how can we tap into that sensory acuity, right? That body language and the tone of voice. If there's anything that you could share there, I think could be quite valuable. I think what you're talking about.
Sure. I mean, I know they can't see the video, but if you ever had a meeting with someone where they're talking to you and it's like this, now what I just did for everyone who's listening, I turned
you're looking the other way,
camera, right? That's so off-putting. You're having a meeting with someone, are you even listening to me? Like, or do you hear what I'm saying? You can't tell? Or people who kind of just like look off in the distance like this when you're talking to them?
Yes.
Okay, so non-verbally, we have to realize that even though we're on camera, that you can't see the whole body, that engaging either with the screen, I'm looking at you, or engaging while I'm looking into the camera now is important, right? Also, using gestures, allowing your hands to be up in the frame. That's really important. I always tell my team there's something about, even though most of us are working from home, there's a wonderful scientific study called enclothed cognition, and it talks about how our clothes do affect how we think about our job and ourself. So just because you're working from home, don't work in your pajamas, right? When I have an office here, I enter it, I'm in my office, I'm at work. I dress like I'm going to work. When it's 5 p.m. and I'm done, man, put the shorts and the t-shirt on, right? It doesn't matter at that time. So when you're on the call, remember that is what you're going to make people perceive about you is everything from your background to your grooming, to your clothes, to your facial expressions. So it's just as important, maybe even more so than when we were on in real life, as not just on Zoom. And one last tip I tell people, I was reading this really interesting report. It was saying that I think it was, don't quote me on this, it might be 80%. It was a really high percentage of the people that were surveyed spend most of their time looking at their own image in Zoom or Teams.
That's true. That's
right?
true.
And so there's this feature that if you go to the little ellipsis, you can actually hide self-view. So when I do Zoom meetings, I can't see myself.
Well, I think that's a good thing, because I don't know if that is intentional or it's just because like the human, we're conditioned to do that, to look at ourselves.
Yeah.
And like you said, it by doing it, we might be hearing the other person, but are we really listening to relate and understand?
I'm not seeing your facial expressions if I'm watching mine, right?
Yeah.
Now I get it. Everyone wants to make sure their hair is good, nothing in their teeth. But if you think about a real life conversation, I can't see myself, right? I can only see what's in front of me, my hands maybe. I can't see my face or anything. So I try to make my online conversations as much as in real life as possible.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And anybody got some good tips from that, make sure you turn that off and I think that is because that will again allow you to really concentrate on not just hearing the words, but listening for the nonverbal communication, the tone of voice and I don't know if you've heard this too, Chris. That effective communication. They say that 55% of effective communication is nonverbal communicate. It's nonverbal. 38% is tone, and only 7% is words.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I agree that the percentage definitely tips into the nonverbal. I think it depends on the medium as far as the percentages
Sure.
go. But for sure, I mean, when you're in person, if in person, I mean, the things that we show have much more of an effect. Even something nonverbal like the tone of our voice could change the whole meaning of how we're saying something,
Yeah.
which is why when we get mad at people in text message or email, there's no emotion there. So when we read something, we're putting the emotion that we have right now. So if I'm in a bad mood and you text me and we're good buddies and you're like, hey, come on, jerk, jump online. I'm like, he just called me a jerk. What does he think he's doing? Like, nah, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Whereas if I was in a good mood, I'd be like, Chris is always joking with me, always calling me that, right? So when you're verbally and in front of people, that body language and that tone is just so important in getting that message across.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you shared there. What would you recommend, like, those that are listening right now, that's saying, my God, this is very interesting. How can I now really, what can I do a better job right now in connecting with other people, whether if that's in their job, whether if it's as maybe a parent to a child, a spouses, maintain a marriage. This could apply to so many different situations. How we can do better now connecting with people, like again, to your title, winning friends, influencing people, empowering them to be their best, and while we're achieving our goals at the same time. Maybe if
Yeah,
there's like some kind of process or something that you would recommend that people start with when
there
when
is.
they go embark in this journey.
Yeah, I'll give you a few tips. So this is the hardest one for everyone, but the first one is you have to become self-aware.
Yeah.
And this is painful. Okay, it's painful because when I say self-aware, it doesn't mean you have to look at yourself and find all your flaws, but you need to know the strengths and weaknesses in your communication style. Right? So I'm a very direct person. And in my younger years, I remember saying things like this. It's embarrassing to even admit it, but I would say things like, well, I mean, I know I'm blunt, but I'm just being honest. If they can't handle it, that's not my problem. Right. And I hear myself and I'm like, oh, that's so terrible. It's cringeworthy. Right. That it was like my excuse to be overly blunt with someone. Now, when I became self-aware through the help of some mentors and things like that, I realized that style of communicating, yes, was I being honest, but do we always have to be that blunt? Do you always have to be that direct? It's not kind. It's not empathetic, right? So stage one, you have to become self-aware. You have to be able to notice your weaknesses and your strengths in your communication style.
Love it.
Step two, active listening. And that is really hard. I tell people to practice this. See, active listening, if for those of you that might not know the term, it's when someone else is speaking, you're actually listening to them without thinking about what you're going to say next. Right. So if I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next and you're asking me a question and maybe you divert, you kind of ask a B question that's a little bit different. I didn't hear it because I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. And now I answer something. You're like, but that doesn't answer the question. And now you're thinking about, well, he didn't even answer my question. Was he listening to me? And now you're not hearing what I'm saying. And the conversation gets derailed. Right. So it's not active listening is not as easy as it sounds because we all want to have words to say. We don't want to look dumb and feel dumb, but there's absolutely no harm in maybe a 1 second pause after just to kind of get your thoughts there, but practice active listening. And then, I mean, there's many more steps, but I'll give you the third one, which I think can really get people off is really practice communication with empathy, right? Communication with empathy is such a huge part. When we learn to empathize with people, then it can change the nature of our conversations. And I use an example of where, look, I own my company, I have employees. So if I have an employee not doing their job, I can be like, listen, get it together or you're out. That's my right. I can do that. Or I can have a meeting and say, hey, Chris, is everything okay? I've noticed lately you haven't been your old self. And that empathetic approach might help me find out, yeah, he's having some problems in life. And we might be able to find a better solution than threatening someone's livelihood. So those three things, you practice those, you're on a very upward path to great communication.
Yeah, I love what you just shared there. And it's so true, Chris, when you said, you're not listening to respond, you're listening to relate and understand. Do you think in those cases, like when you're listening to relate and understand, and maybe you're still unclear what they said, you can, like you said, pause. But if you're in doubt, ask a question.
Oh, I love that. I mean, so many times we feel like, well, if I don't understand it, and I might look dumb.
Yeah.
But you look dumber if you're trying to figure it out while you're talking, and now you're confusing everything. There's no harm in saying, like, I don't know if I really understood that last. Can you repeat that or reword that? Like, I'm having a bad brain.
I do it all the time, and it's like, and it doesn't. And I think when you think that they're going to think that you're stupid, that's really only you're thinking that way. Half the time they're like, oh my God, the guy's really actually listening to me.
Exactly. Yeah. And they usually look at you even with more rapport and respect because you were willing to say, can you help me out? Like, explain that to me more.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I love that. Love that. So important. And we are big advocates of that active listening. And I love the fact that you said active listening and not just listening. Active listening is something we gotta, and you said through the self-awareness, you gotta be aware of that. Are you really truly listening to relate and understand? Because And like you said, not just the words you're hearing, again, the tone of voice, the facial expressions, the eye contact, the whatever, there could be some other vibes that you could be picking up on and all that.
Because nowadays, even we're all working from home, so it's easy. I can have this up. I could be talking to you and be reading my email. You would never know, right? But it's definitely going to be a disconnect. So I tell people, like, when you're in that meeting, make it full screen, block out everything else. Don't get sidetracked by a text or something else. Like, make that conversation the reason that you're there right now. And then you'll see a massive increase if you practice those things.
Wow, that's great. And like you said, would it be safe to say that, communication is ongoing? It's about continuous improvement. We're not going to become masters of it like in overnight or taking a course. We got to keep doing it.
Keep doing it. And no matter how great you get at it, there's always going to be times where you kind of fall back a few steps. I mean, there's times where I'm overstressed or things are not going well that I may be too direct in my communication. I'd be like, oh, Chris, that wasn't the right way. So don't look at a minor fallback as like you failed completely. It takes time to master these things.
I love it. So true. Well, I know we got to go to break, but when we come back, I know you got more to share in this particular area. We hope everybody that's listening is getting great value. I know I am. This is just really great stuff. And Chris has got more to share. So we want to make sure everybody comes back after break. And if you're just joining us, we are talking about human hacking, win friends, influence people, and achieve your goals. And we highly encourage everybody to go back and listen to the show in its entirety. And better yet, after you've done that for yourself, share the show with a friend, a colleague, a business partner, your team, because this is imperative. If you're going to really raise your level of influence, raise up the bar with your relationships, these are all things that are going to be reflected in your key performance indicators, whatever that is important in your business. We'll be right back after the break.
What is balance? It's being true to your purpose and not being distracted by shiny objects, surrounding yourself with family and loved ones, nurturing your spirituality, maintaining healthy balance of emotional and physical wellness, and being present in the moment. Chris Salem creates awareness about unblocking mindset barriers for sales professionals, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and all types of people to have sustainable success at the next level. The solution evolves out of the problem or challenge. The issue is that many people and businesses manage the effect but do not address the root cause. You now have an opportunity to live your life and operate your business in the solution rather than the effect of your challenges. Schedule a time to chat about your goals and the person you desire to be by going to ChristopherSalem.com. We have group consulting calls, one-on-one, and other programs to assist you. It will be the best thing you do for yourself to see how sustainable success is possible for you in your life and business. Join us at the next level. Visit ChristopherSalem.com. Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today. You are listening to Sustainable Success with Chris Salem. Send an email to Chris at ChristopherSalem.com. Now, back to Sustainable Success.
Welcome back to Sustainable Success. If you're just joining us, we're talking about human hacking, win friends, influence people, and achieve your goals. We're here with Christopher Hadnagy. Again, if you, we encourage you to go back and listen to this show in its entirety here later today. Again, a wealth of information. Chris, I know in the first segment you gave us a little background about the human hacking concept and, the importance of, of really, listening to read in between the lines, not just the words we hear, but, nonverbal communication, eye contact, and some of the challenges that we faced, since COVID, where, a lot of times we're communicating with people over platforms like Zoom and Teams and other types of platforms. Talk a little bit about, from what you're seeing right now, why, why it's going to be more important than ever to really relate and understand with the people that you're talking with, if it's going to really take whatever initiative it is to the next level, whether if you're in sales, whether if you're a company catering to your customers, whether if it's a relationship between two people, whatever that may be, why it's so important that we have to take ownership, you individually.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable question. If we go back to our first segment and we talk about that very first piece of becoming a great communicator, which is self-awareness, you have to take ownership of your strengths and weaknesses. But then when you're now entering, let's say you've done all this, you practiced the active listening, you practiced using empathy, you've practiced self-awareness. Now you're in this conversation. You have to realize that maybe the person you're about to converse with or negotiate with or meet with hasn't done all those steps. They haven't gone through that, right? So you have taken all this time to better yourself, and now you're with someone who might still be communicating poorly, right? And you have to take ownership of now maybe trying to run this conversation. It doesn't mean you sit there and say, hey, man, you're not doing this right? Why are you saying things like that? It's like you don't call people out. You need to kind of have your goals in mind for what you want to accomplish here. My wife and I started this thing. I remember years ago, we used to argue all the time. She'd come in the office, she'd tell me a problem she's having, and I'd have 15 solutions, right? And then one day, I don't know, it hit me. I don't know why. We were talking, and I said to her, hey, before you go on, is this an answer conversation or a just listen conversation? And she goes, just listen. I'm like, oh, okay. So I just listened. And she's like, that was awesome. And I'm like, great. That was great for me too. And I didn't spend all my time thinking about solutions. So now we had this thing going where I took control of it and said, is this a listen or an answer conversation? And then almost every time, even though it was a listen conversation, she would say at the end, but if you have anything you can think of, like I'm willing to listen. Right. So I gave her what she needed, and we were able to, fix an argument point in our marriage. And by using some of these communication skills, it was able to kind of smooth everything over.
I love that story, Chris. And what you just illustrated is, would it be safe to say from your experience doing this for a while, most problems and challenges, like in something just in a case between a relationship between two people, husband, wife, relationship between partners, or a supervisor to a subordinate, is because the communication is based on assumption and speculation.
Oh.
You right there said, you asked a question, am I here to listen or am I here to give advice? Sometimes, like you said, a woman, I know with my wife, sometimes it's just, if I just listen, I don't even have to say anything. I just listen. That is like gold to her.
Yeah. I had a client who came to me with a problem, some employee problems, and I was doing some coaching with him. And he had this one guy that was working with him. And he said, man, let's just call him Joe. He said, when I hired Joe, this guy was amazing. And he was my top person in the whole company. Now, a couple of years go by, and he's errors in the report. There's problems with him. He's not finishing work on time. I think I got to let him go. He wanted to talk to me, get my advice. I said, well, hey, before you do that, what about an empathetic conversation? What about calling him in your office and saying to him what you just said to me? Joe, you were my best. I've noticed lately that something's wrong. Are you okay? And he did that. He said the guy broke down crying. He said, I'm going through a divorce. My kids are mad at me. My wife hates me. And I haven't been sleeping well. So I've kind of just lost it. I'm so sorry that it's affecting my job. Right. And the guy called me back and he's telling me this story. And I'm like, wasn't that better than you walking in and saying, Joe, your quality stinks. You're out. Now, who knows what he would have done with himself. So
Exactly.
now he was able to now say to Joe, listen, I want you to be back to where you were. So here's what we're going to do. Let me take some responsibility off your shoulders for a couple of months until you can get your feet under you again. And then, we'll talk again. The guy was so appreciative, right? So appreciative. And the reality is, let's say Joe said, you know what? I don't like my job anymore. I don't like being here. Well, then you still could be empathetic and say, okay, let's come up with an exit strategy, right? Because I don't want you to be here if you don't want to be here, and you don't want to be here. So let's come up with an exit strategy. Why don't you take the next 30 days and go look for a job? But he didn't say that. What he said, but he loved his job, but his life was getting in the way. So they gave him a couple months, not a couple months off, gave him a couple months with some reduced responsibilities. And Joe is still there today, being one of the best employees this guy has.
Wow. And what you just illustrated there, Chris, from what I heard is think about the bottom line. You look at, performance indicators. That he just built more rapport and trust with that employee. Now, maybe prior to that, Joe was performing well, and maybe he was meeting his numbers, but maybe things have slipped. Why now get rid of somebody based on an assumption or speculation?
Yes.
Now have to onboard somebody. That's going to cost your company even more money and more time than if you just simply had asked a question to make him feel psychologically safe, to maybe now divulge some information that you can now figure, oh, there's the reason what's going on.
And if the reason was something like he just didn't like the job or wasn't into the company anymore, that's a different answer.
The other way.
Right. Yeah. That's fine. But like you said, I love that part because we assume it. We see somebody, and because the decline, we're like, well, I haven't changed. The company's only gotten better. So he's the one changing. He must just not like his job anymore. He's getting too complacent. Yeah. Oof, boy, we go down that route. And then what happens is we start treating people based on what we assume is their motives. Yeah. And that's when the relationship can get really rocky. Then all of a sudden he's like, why is the boss treating me so badly? Like, I didn't do anything. Is he mad at me too? And now it's going to affect his quality even more. So having that psychologically safe, open conversation, that could save everything.
No, so true. I love what you're saying there. Share with the audience, like if now, like again, even if they're from a business perspective, you're a manager, you're a business owner, and they just heard this now and they're like, oh my God, where was this podcast with Chris 3 months ago when I went through this, and now I'm dealing with the aftermath. What can be some steps that you would recommend people could do a better job in, because they can't control the person itself or their communication, but they can control their own, what they can do better. And you mentioned stuff earlier in the first episode, first segment about awareness, that self-awareness. Walk the audience through a little bit of what that manager, business owner could do better from his or her control in a situation like that.
So I do a couple things. First, I'm a big proponent of using a profiling tool called DISC. It's a communication, not a psychological tool, right? And most of my clients that I work with on this kind of stuff is I'll give them the DISC test and then their team also. Because what will happen is when they take it, it's almost like a weird, I call it the holy crap effect, right? It's like you're reading it and you're like, whoa, that's me. Holy crap, how did they get it? Like so close. And it tells you your strengths and your weaknesses. Now, if you do it honestly, if you answer it honestly, the test will come back and give you exactly how you can improve in your communication. But now the strength is if you do that with your team, and your team knows their communication strengths and weaknesses and knows yours. I'm a very direct communicator. If I got to have a meeting with one of my very introverted people, I know that I'm going to have to adjust my communication profile if I want to motivate them to make a change. So by having that, armed with that knowledge, very, very important. If someone's not really into those kind of tests, what I say is get someone you really trust, someone close to you, someone that won't lie to you and blow smoke at you, like maybe your mate, your spouse, a partner, best friend, and say, hey, if you had to pick out 3 or 4 of communication qualities that I lack or things that you wish I could be better at, what would it be? And really listen to what they say. And then ask them why. So if they say, like, Chris, sometimes you're just too blunt. Okay, tell me why that bothers you. Like, I want to hear, and that's to be really honest with me, right? And you get the information and you're writing that down. There's your list of things to improve that will probably make you a better manager, better business owner, better communicator.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you said, like a DISC profile, like it's like a personality assessment. Because sometimes we are maybe on the DISC profile, like maybe we're task oriented or maybe we're people centric oriented. Mm-hmm. So let's just say that example you just shared, which I love, when you were blunt and straightforward. Well, a lot of times if you're task oriented, you want to show that, hey, I've proven that if you do this will work. I've proven it. So that could be like an engineer. Now, how they communicate to someone who's more people centric, that is wants the empathy more on the front end than on the back end, they could take that all the wrong way.
100%. I remember, so my EA, she's very, very C. Like she's very like lists of everything.
Yes.
Lists, And this is when she first started working for me, like 12 years ago. I would say, hey, I need a flight to Dallas on Monday, and I'm going to return Tuesday. And she would come back with like pages of options, pages. And I would go, I don't have time to read all that. I just go book it myself.
Yeah.
So eventually she gets frustrated with me, and she's like, why do you ask me to go do this and don't use it? And I'm like, well, why do you send me 8 pages of options? She goes, because you said Monday, coming back Tuesday. You didn't say what time. You didn't say, if you needed a rental car. You didn't say what hotel. So I gave you the options because you didn't give me any detail. And I'm like, oh, that's dumb, right? So instead of asking me,
there's the assumptions, right? Like I wasn't specific, clear, and concise on both sides. Yes. She could have said if she can't control but she could have said what time frame,
Yep. So we learned that, and now we made a sheet where when I need a flight, it's like I just go, hey, I want to leave this time, arrive this time. I only need to be there for this many hours. I don't need a rental car. I need a hotel, close to this address. And bam, now I get one option, and it's done, right? So much better when you learn that communication piece, and then you can actually blend it with the type of communicator that you're working with.
Yeah. No, it is fantastic. So, and these are things that we oftentimes are happening all the time around us, and we just take it for granted, and we don't realize that they individually and then when they start to accumulate can add up to bigger issues, and then when that communication is not that ineffective communication is not addressed, and then obviously leads to conflict. So you made some really, really valid points there. If we were to look at, what you're talking about, human hacking, effective communication, from you being an expert in this area, talk about why business owners and business leaders, because we have people that either are running companies here or people that might lead a business unit, for a small to mid-size or a Fortune 500 company, why they should be putting this initiative higher on their priorities. Not that they have to solve it overnight, because that's impossible, but that they start getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, there's a few good reasons to answer that. So let's first talk internal. Company culture is a big deal. Nowadays with this, some companies and organizations forcing everyone to go back to the office, and people are just quitting. They're looking for another job. Job market is difficult in some environments. So people don't want to be in an environment where they feel like it's not conducive to their personality. Being a better communicator and working on that as a team makes corporate culture so much better. Right? I was having a chat with a guy who had a client, and another coach who had a client, and this manager, he was a manager that he seemed to know everything, and he was really, really smart. So none of his team ever felt comfortable giving him suggestions. So they didn't. So the boss took him out to dinner one night and told him, said, hey, the team is really afraid to even talk to you because they just think you're just going to shoot them down because you're just so smart and you always say like how much you know. And the guy was like, really? They think that about me? He's like, yeah, I hear this all the time. He did something amazing. He went back and he apologized to his whole team. He said, I did not know that I was communicating that way. And then he said, I would like to sit with each one of you personally and hear some of your suggestions for me. Would you do that and allow me to write them down? He would meet with the person. He would say, okay, some of these are going to take me a while. Are you okay giving me 48 hours to kind of digest this and I can come back to you with a plan? The client, I was talking with the coach, he was telling me that his client came back and said he's never seen such a tight-knit team. So from an internal perspective, being able to master that, you create a business unit. You can create a team there that just makes your company excel.
Oh, absolutely.
It could be beautiful for that reason.
Well, you just said something, you shared something very important that, again, it starts with here, the business leader. We can't control what the other people are going to do, but if we take control and we do it for ourselves, we ask, we bring people in to invite them in to do it, and being that example and being resourceful will hopefully rub off them in a good way to do that for themselves. Now, imagine now other departments start seeing what that department's doing. Yes. It has a ripple effect. So I started thinking my God, that could transform a company where they are and where they want to go. And then how does that reflect outward for the clients and customers that they're serving?
And that's it. When you have a tight-knit team, the clients feel that. Yeah. Right. I mean, they see the humor, they see the fact that they're friendly with each other. That makes the clients go, man, if they like each other that much, it must be a great place to work. So it does have a very valuable effect, even from the external clients, vendors. They see that. And it happens in my company all the time. People always say, hey, if you're ever hiring, please let me know, kind of thing, because they'll see that the team, they're friends. They're actually, I've had one of my employees that lives down here in Florida fly up to Pennsylvania to visit another employee, just because they became friends at work.
That's unbelievable.
Right? Yeah, it's really nice when you see that, to be able to see that your company culture is really taking a hold in it, and it's something that's very, very valuable.
Yeah, well, you just made some really, really great insights of why effective communication is a strategy we can't overlook. We have to rank it higher, a lot higher, if not the most important thing in any business that's out there, and not only amongst each other first, but like you said, then how that reflects outward and with the customers, clients, patients, whatever who you cater to. Yeah.
And it's easy to look at the company and say, and we need more business, we need more sales, we need more this, we need more that, and that's the flat level problems. But if you can fix the communication, then it's easy to go to your team and say, hey guys, okay, we're having this struggle over here. Who's got ideas? What can we do? Right? And now they're invested in this company. They want to save it. They want to see it succeed. You're going to see a lot of people come and fight for you like you never thought before. So, from an internal perspective, getting that mastered can make a huge difference in success or failure. Yeah,
so true. We hope everybody is getting some great value out of this segment here. I know I am. There is just so many golden nuggets that Chris has shared here. Again, we encourage everybody to go back and listen to this segment again. There's just a lot of gold here. Chris, as we're going to be heading into break here in the next 30 seconds, anything that you want to sum up what you shared today in this segment, 10, 15 seconds.
Using an empathetic, self-aware approach to have great communication can be something that I think could enhance a team, enhance a relationship, a marriage, could make everything better.
Wow. Unbelievable. Great stuff. So everybody, we're going to be going to break here, but we got more to come. We have another segment here with Chris Hadnagy, where we're talking about human hacking, win friends, influence people, and achieve your goals. We'll be right back after the break.
What is balance? It's being true to your purpose and not being distracted by shiny objects, surrounding yourself with family and loved ones, nurturing your spirituality, maintaining healthy balance of emotional and physical wellness, and being present in the moment. Chris Salem creates awareness about unblocking mindset barriers for sales professionals, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and all types of people to have sustainable success at the next level. The solution evolves out of the problem or challenge. The issue is that many people and businesses manage the effect but do not address the root cause. You now have an opportunity to live your life and operate your business in the solution rather than the effect of your challenges. Schedule a time to chat about your goals and the person you desire to be by going to ChristopherSalem.com. We have group consulting calls, one-on-one, and other programs to assist you. It will be the best thing you do for yourself to see how sustainable success is possible for you in your life and business. Join us at the next level. Visit ChristopherSalem.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Sustainable Success with Chris Salem. Send an email to Chris at ChristopherSalem.com. Now, back to Sustainable Success.
Welcome back to Sustainable Success. If you're just joining us here, we are with Christopher Hadnagy. Again, he has been speaking on human hacking, win friends, influence people, and achieve your goals. It's from his book, and you're going to find out more about how you can get your hands on that here later today. Our show is being brought to you again by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people. Now, they also have a new section to their platform called From Athletes to Entrepreneur. For those professional athletes that are transitioning into everyday life, now you get to do it with other people that are doing it at the same time or somewhere along the lines in the same time frame. You can now form groups where you can talk about your transition and how you can make it more seamless by doing it together. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. And they also have a podcast on that very section called From Athletes to Entrepreneurs. You check that out, which they have a new guest each and every week. And again, that's alumnidirect.com. And again, alumnidirect.com. Chris, so much valuable insights today, just a lot of golden nuggets that you've shared here. I know there's a chapter in your book on the concept of elicitation, and I know how it is applied to law enforcement particularly, but can you talk a little bit about that particular concept, about it, and why you wrote it up in the book, and really what impact that it does have around this topic that you shared today?
So I define elicitation as a conversation with intent. So in essence, you have a goal. You want to get some information out of somebody. And I'm not talking about being malicious. You want to get something out of somebody. And you can just walk up and ask them, hey, Chris, what's your date of birth? I can do that, right? Or what I can do is I can use elicitation skills. So here's an example. I can say, hey, let me ask you this question. You and my brother, you're about the same age. His birthday's coming up. I got no clue what to buy him. And every year, I fail at it miserably. Tell me something that your best friend or your brother bought you for your birthday that you just loved. Right? And now you say something, I don't know. He bought you tickets to a Lakers game, right? Bought you tickets to a show that you really liked. Oh, really? So you went to that? You went to that Lakers game? Oh, man, what? You must be a spring baby. You're like, oh yeah, I was born in April. Oh, my sister was born on the 13th. You're like, oh, I'm the 11th. Great. Now, you see, I got your date of birth. I didn't have to actually ask for it. That is elicitation. So when you learn and practice those skills, and law enforcement, they use it all the time. Because, it's interviewing suspects is not what you see on TV. They're not slamming their fist on the table.
Exactly.
And, it's not. It's like they come in and act to be your friend. They have to be your friend, build rapport, even with people who do really awful things. That way they can get the confession.
And I can understand that, to separate your moral values in a situation like that, because probably that one side of it is like, yeah, I'd love to cream this guy,
yeah,
but I can't. But I gotta come off like I'm his friend, and I gotta be empathetic and kind. Yep. So that's an art in itself. So happy if you want to elaborate anything further on that. I think that's a valuable skill to develop.
So let's talk about this from a business success standpoint, right? So you have let's say you're having team meetings and you want to get people more engaged and involved. And you can ask the question, like, anyone have anything that you want to say? I've done that before in team meetings, and guess what you get? Usually crickets. Nobody wants to be the first to step up or anything like that. But let's say we're in a team meeting. I can actually call somebody out, and not in a negative way. I could say, hey, Chris, tell me one of the great stories from this week that you had. Maybe a client story or a vendor story. Give me something awesome so the team can kind of hear about it. Now you talk about this call you were on, and man, I had this great conversation with this guy, and he's probably going to sign up for all these services. It was really awesome. I can't wait to introduce him to the team. Wow, now you're going to see other people wanting to share. So now I get them involved. This is like a skill of using elicitation, right? You're eliciting that response from your team,
Yeah.
but by doing it in a positive way instead of putting people on the spot, right? Or you might even, if you feel like maybe they're introverted, you might even before the team meeting say, hey, Chris, during the meeting, I'm going to ask if you can give a good story from this week. Can you think of one real quick? So when I ask you, you have it. Oh yeah, man, that'd be awesome. Great. Now I got my insider guy, and now we're going to get the team motivated.
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't feel like they're put on the spot because
Yeah.
they weren't anticipating it.
Exactly. So when you plan out your conversations and then you use all the other skills we talked about in the first two segments, and then you blend that with elicitation, which you said this multiple times during our interview, ask a lot of questions. Questions are so much more important than statements, especially in elicitation conversations. So you never want to be in a spot like you could tell too non-verbally. If you're giving a lecture, people's eyes will glaze over. They kind of lose like track of what you're saying. They look a little bored. Conversation should be back and forth. That's what a conversation is. So if you ever feel like, am I talking too much? You probably are. So stop and let the other person jump in.
No, so true. And sometimes, like when you shared there, Chris, it could be like, hey, maybe you make a statement, you chunk it down. I've learned this as a professional speaker, like so I don't ramble on and go on tangents. I make a statement and then I'll say, hey, what do you think of that?
Mm-hmm.
How would you look at that and why? And somebody
Uh-huh.
would say in the audience, and like, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Or somebody could contradict. No, I don't. Okay, no problem. And then go into the next thing. So I think, like you said, that keeps that engagement two-way
Yes.
and not like where, like you said, because people's attention spans nowadays, especially in the world we live in with the technology, is like a lot less than it was.
Yeah. I do this thing when I teach a few classes, and I will stay in the beginning of the class. A lot of this stuff I'm going to cover is psychology, and I'm not a psychologist. So if anyone sitting here knows that something I'm saying is old or outdated, or we have a new understanding, please do not think, well, I'm the instructor, so I'm always right. I need you guys to correct me. It's your job to make me better for the next class. And they kind of all chuckle at that. And now here's the massive follow through. If you ever do this, you have to follow through. If someone does it, you can't get argumentative. Right. So if now someone does correct you, go, I think that study has been found false. You can go, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You go, oh, well, let me write that down and we'll do some research tonight. Or thank you for bringing that out. You don't always have to agree, but if you give your class or like you do your audience the freedom to feel like they can actually be part of it, oof, boy, that opens the room up for a whole different level of listening, because now they're listening to participate, not listening just to hear.
That's true. And that's so important. Like what you just said, you made a key statement there, not to just hear, but to participate. Because when you participate, what I gathered from what I hear from that is that I've heard what you said. Now you're inviting me to draw my own conclusion, how I perceive that. And then how can I play a part in taking action with you to make something work? Because if you do it all and I don't do anything, then are we going to move the ball forward, especially if it's going to benefit me? No, I got to do my part.
Yeah. And I like the fact that when you do it, you open it up and people can disagree. And that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is the beautiful part of being either a teacher or a speaker or trainer, is that when you have people who openly feel like they can disagree and they're not going to get cut down or told they're wrong, that opens a classroom in a whole new way. I've done this for years in teaching. Even I teach at the University of Arizona too, and I'll have students come in and just say, I really don't agree with that philosophy. Okay, great. Then I want you to come back to me with why you don't agree and how you would change it. Right. And I welcome that, because at the end of the day, if I still feel I'm right, I'm going to still teach it my way. But heck, maybe you can change me.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've had it happen.
I agree, because at least it keeps them engaged. They're thinking about it, and they're not just going, okay, I'm just going to do what I got to do to check a box off, and then it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a big proponent too for. I know we talked about this in the first segment, but I just thought about it when we're talking about this. Is if you're training, teaching, or meetings are online, cameras on all the time, and we cameras off. I think it's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to be doing other things. Cameras on, to me, is one of those requirements. Especially, I'm a virtual company, and I have been since I started. And every meeting we got to have cameras on, because we're not in the same room. We're rarely together all as a company and a team. This at least gives us something to connect with.
Exactly. Because, again, if they're off, unless you're giving a presentation or something like that, it's
Yeah.
understandable. But there's no interaction because people could be looking out the window, people could be looking at something else. They're just going through the motions to say, yeah, I was on there, but they really weren't involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many times have we done that? In a meeting with the cameras off, I found myself scrolling through email. I found myself looking at my phone because now you can't see me looking down, so that's okay if I'm on my phone, right? I got to finish that New York Times crossword puzzle sometime today, right? So, I'm a big proponent of keeping cameras on for that reason. And also, when we talk about all these skills, so we already talked about being self-aware. We talked about using empathy. We talked about communication profiling, the use of elicitation. All of these things are so much easier to do when you can see the person that you're interacting with. Using nonverbals, of course. I mean, even though there are nonverbals in voice tone and things like that, it's just so much easier to apply all these skills when you can actually see the person that you're interacting with.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I always say when people ask me as a professional speaker, do you prefer in person or virtual? Of course, I'm going to always say in person, but
Yes.
But virtual is fine too, as long as again people are, engaged. If we have if we have 100, 200 people on the virtual, okay, we can't have everybody on camera. That could be a distraction then. But nonetheless, that when we can get people involved in the chat and the chat's blowing up with feedback and responses to what you've shared, and when you ask the audience a question, well, great. Now they're listening because you got them involved, and it's not a one-sided lecture. It's actually you're having a conversation with the entire audience, even though it's not with everybody individually, but nonetheless, it's those peers feel like, hey, somebody who answered your question is what I was thinking too, so they can relate to it.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm with you as far as in person. I love in person way better than online. Now that we're out of the pandemic era, I just feel it's so much easier to connect with people when you're in person, and plus you have the pre and after show time to interact with people. Whereas online, usually when you're done, there's a few goodbyes, and then you click the X, and no, that's it, we're done, kind of thing. I do love the interaction pre and post that help.
No, absolutely. No, this is great, great information you're sharing. Now, Chris, as we get into the last couple minutes, we're gonna, because then I want to give time for people to get to know you, how to reach out to you. Anything in the next minute and a half, 2 minutes that either you want to sum up or add that you have not shared in these three segments, just to tie everything together about human hacking and how we can win people over in ways that benefit all.
Yeah, so we talk a lot in the book and in my trainings about the principles of influence, and those were studied and researched by someone named Dr. Robert Cialdini. He wrote a couple amazing books on these themes, and I'm a big proponent of understanding these principles of influence for multiple reasons. First, sometimes they're used maliciously against us by marketing or salespeople. If you understand them, you'll know when they're being used against you. But second, they're really powerful if you can learn to use them in your communications. Learning how to use authority or use reciprocation or use social proof. These things can really enhance the way that you communicate with others. So I wrote about them in my book, but I also always recommend Dr. Cialdini's books because I think that they're truly phenomenal in helping us understand the science behind this. And it can take, again, every time I talk about it, you can take that level of enhancement in your communication just to a whole nother level.
Wow. Powerful, powerful stuff here. So I want to leave the rest of this time for you so that you could share with the audience, how can people get in touch with you? What are you up to right now? Anything that you'd like to share with the audience here? And please, anything about the book as well.
Thank you. So the best way is LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. And as long as you don't try to sell me something in the first 30 seconds that we're connected, I'll probably answer you, right? I hate when that happens. I'm sure we all do. LinkedIn's a great way to connect with me. My corporate website is social-engineer.com. That's where you can find out stuff about our work and coaching and things like that. We have a conference in November called the Human Behavior Conference. And this year it's going to be blending in the principles of influence with staying secure. So that's in November. You can find out information on humanbehaviorcon.com. And for the last 8 years, I've been running a passion project called the Innocent Lives Foundation. It's a nonprofit that helps law enforcement around the globe geolocate and track people who traffic children. And we've accomplished 560 cases so far with law enforcement. So if you want to find out more about that, you can go to innocentlivesfoundation.org. I'm really proud of the team over there. And we've, like I said, been around 8 years. And as a nonprofit, that's kind of a big milestone. So I think that's about all the things I'm up to right now, right there.
Wow, that's fabulous. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And again, we want to thank you personally for taking the time to be with us here and sharing this insight. We welcome you again on a future show here. And again, not only do I want to thank you personally, but also on the behalf of our Voice America business channel and also now on the Libsyn platform, we want to thank you personally.
Thank you. It was really great being here. Really nice show. I like it.
Thank you. And listeners, we want, again, we encourage you to, get in contact with Chris, reach out to him on LinkedIn again, get to know him, make sure you get your hands on the book. Again, all the information in terms of how you can connect with Chris directly, including the book, will all be in the show notes. So again, all of that is there. They're clickable. Reach out, take advantage of this. Again, nothing changes unless you take action. So it's very, very important. And Chris is somebody that you definitely want to do that with. Easy to talk to because, hey, he's a human hacker in terms of communication. Don't let this opportunity slide by. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week. Again, joining us here, The Sustainable Success Way. We are committed each and every week, bringing in subject matter experts like Chris in. And we want to encourage everyone to be back next Thursday, same time, 3 to 4 p.m. East Coast time, as we'll be here with another subject matter expert sharing his or her words of wisdom and insights and personal experience to help elevate you personally and your business to the next level. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you then.
Thank you for tuning into Sustainable Success. Be sure to join Chris Salem and his guests every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Time and 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Business Channel. Have an incredible week.